This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And good morning and welcome to it. It's Wednesday. Wednesday here on the Steve Gruber Show. It's Back to the Future Day. And for those of you that don't know, that weren't fans of the film, today is the day featured in one of the films, October the 21st, 2015. How many of the things that came true that they were predicting then, you know, like minute-to-minute weather? Well, they still don't have it quite right. But hey, it's one of those days that was marked out 30 years ago. And I guess what's more, I don't know, is it just more surprising that it's been 30 years since I saw the movie? It's been 30 years since I saw the movie. You know, and that's really more, that's more concerning to me than just about anything else. Congressman Paul Ryan said last night that he will consider taking the speakership from John Boehner under the right conditions. One of those conditions being that his family that they understand that his family comes first, and that his family understands it takes a lot of work. So it's kind of a two-sided understanding there. But Paul Ryan, who is a dedicated father and husband and bow hunter, I don't know how he can have any time this time of the year. He said he will take it. He's not going to make deals and give things away, but he will make a deal. And he will take the job that some call the hardest job, or the most difficult, or the most thankless job in Washington, D.C., that being the Speaker of the House. Of course, as you know, John Boehner stepped down, and Kevin McCarthy stepped in it and removed himself from the process by uttering moronic statements. Now, for the folks that we've talked to on this program, Congressman Bill Huizenga, and other, members of the Michigan Congressional Coalition, Congressman Tim Walberg, have all said that if Paul Ryan put his hat in the ring, they would support him wholeheartedly. So we know, to begin with at least, a couple of Republicans that we spoke with here just in the last few days said they will support him. And what would Paul Ryan mean? What will Paul Ryan mean to the process? I suppose if he's given the support, I suppose he would bring back some optimism to the Republicans. And you would hope he would bring back a vigorous debate to the conversation. You know, that's what we've lost here. You see, when Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House forever and a day, he challenged Ronald Reagan all the way across the board, but they were civil to each other. He would invite Tip O'Neill over to the White House, and they would have lunch and so forth. But it was a vigorous debate. When Newt Gingrich was in office, it became more, more partisan. And the vitriol seemed to ratchet up, but they still worked to get things done. Newt Gingrich against Bill Clinton. There has to come a time when the goal of both sides is to move the ball down the field a little bit. There has to be. The vigorous debate is good for everybody. The polarization, constant polarization, and no agreement on anything, and no goodwill ever, that doesn't work. And so for the Freedom Caucus, on the extreme right and the bomb throwers on the extreme left. We don't need that. The American system works slowly enough as it is, by design. It's the way it's supposed to work. And so what we need here is a chance for people to move forward. We'll see on Friday if Paul Ryan has what it takes. I think we have some comments from Paul Ryan. Let's start with those. I'm sorry, we don't have him yet. We will. My mistake. One of the things that will be early on the agenda, and here's something I wanted to share with you guys. Something I wanted to share with you is that one of the big conversations going forward for the new speaker, and I'm going to guess it's going to be Paul Ryan. I think you would guess that as well, is how is America going to handle this influx of refugees from Syria and elsewhere in the Middle East now? How are we going to handle that? The president says we should take as many as 100,000 refugees into the United States. And that may bother you just a little bit, but does it bother you to learn this? Governor Rick Snyder here in Michigan said he believes Michigan should be a welcoming state to Syrian refugees. He made those comments after the United States planned to accept 10,000 refugees in 2016. But Snyder joined Now Detroit this week. The governor said he doesn't just want to help Syrian refugees, but all Middle Eastern refugees, because he said there are a number of places that need help. According to Governor Rick Snyder here in Michigan, he wants to help them for two reasons. The first is because he said it's the right thing to do to help people in need, and said we have the ability to do that. And second, he says, is because we are proud to have the largest Middle Eastern population in the nation. And he said it creates an environment where we're bringing in good, talented people and creating jobs for people here in Michigan. So Governor Snyder now working with groups that help refugees to figure out what the state's capacity is and how to take in more people. And some people suggesting it's a way to reinvigorate the city of Detroit. Another thing that Snyder said was he needs to make sure the federal government has more assistance to get refugees to Michigan. Overall, in history, Snyder said the government sent them someplace else in the U.S. and then they would eventually move to Michigan because they wanted to be around the cultural excitement we have here. What do you think of that? What do you think about Governor Snyder rolling out the red carpet to bring as many refugees as possible from the Middle East right here to Michigan, to the Detroit area, to southeastern Michigan? Good idea, bad idea? What do you make of it? 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. That should get things rolling. And when we come back, when an election doesn't matter because the school administrator, the principal doesn't like the outcome because the kids that won the election are too Asian and too white. Yeah, it happens in America now. It's 14 after the hour. We'll be right back on the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Lord, I was born a rambling man, trying to make a living and doing the best I can.
All right, it is 18 after the hour on this Wednesday. Thanks for dialing it in. It's the Steve Gruber Show, and if you'd like to get on board and tell me what you think about Governor Rick Snyder setting up for thousands of refugees from the Middle East, Syria, and elsewhere, saying they could revitalize Michigan. I see of creating that huge Middle Eastern population here. In a day and age when nobody respects e pluribus unum, when nobody respects what America's about, when nobody comes here to assimilate, when they all come here to create their own society, not just Middle Eastern refugees, but those from all sorts of countries, that have no interest in learning about English, that have no interest in learning about America, or why we are unique in world history, or why we have set the standard and created more education, more communication, more transportation, more medication, more everything than anybody else in the history of mankind. They have no interest in learning these things. So it concerns me. And I'd have to hear a lot more about the governor's plan before I'd ever buy into that notion that somehow bringing all sorts of refugees here is a good idea. We could revitalize Detroit. Well, yeah, you could do that with refugees from Central and South America, too. And you do it with a variety of ways. There's not one approach. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats yesterday blocked a Republican-backed bill that would have cracked down on so-called sanctuary cities by withholding money to local governments that don't cooperate with federal immigration officials. The bill failed 54-45. It needed 60 votes to advance. This is the stupidity that we're dealing with. The Sanctuary Cities Act became a lightning rod issue ahead of the vote as GOP sponsors tried to peel off just a few Democrats to support it, while Democratic leaders blasted the legislation as counterproductive. Of course, Democrats see all the illegal aliens as future voters and, necessary to their power and their retention of elected office. Some Democrats try to discredit the measure by calling it the Donald Trump Act. And let me tell you something. If you hadn't noticed, Donald Trump's been in the lead in the polls for more than 3 months now. For all the people that predicted that Donald Trump would have flamed out by now, well, he hasn't. GOP backers cast the legislation as a critical first step toward reining in the exploding and risky practice of cities and counties ignoring federal immigration law. Makes no difference. Senator David Vitter of Louisiana put it this way: sanctuary cities and the associated violent crimes by illegal immigrants are reaching a critical point, and we cannot wait any longer to take action to protect Americans here at home, and I agree with that. But you see, Senator Vitter, the psychosis runs much deeper. The psychosis runs much deeper. Let me give you an example. A San Francisco middle school principal withheld the results of a student council election because she was concerned about the lack of diversity among the winners of the top 4 spots. Now keep in mind, the students voted. 80% of the children who attend Everett Middle School in the Mission District are students of color. So says Principal Lena Van Haren. And she was alarmed that no Latino or black candidates were chosen for the top council spots. Only white, Asian, and mixed race students won the election. Won the election. Were voted for by their peers of color, apparently. So she, stepping in to save the children from themselves because there was no diversity, Van Haren, 36-year-old liberal psychotic nut job, stepped in to inform parents about the delay via email and said the community had to create, quote, a council that is truly representative of all voices at Everett. Well, based on that nonsense, maybe we should have nullified the American election. I mean, after all, the African-American community is only 12 or 13% of America. How could we have a black president? That's not representative of America, Miss Van Haren, you moron. She also scheduled a meeting with all the student candidates who won to discuss ways to make it appropriate to take away their wins. She was going to say how to make the results more representative of the student body and brought up the possibility of adding new council positions. Listen, lady, you might have this issue, this psychotic issue with guilt about, being born white. We don't have that problem here. You might have a problem with being an American. We don't have that problem here. When students vote in a student election in 7th grade, we let the results stand. We're not nullifying the election and canceling the election. We're not saying this didn't count. We're just going to pack the student council with a bunch of other people that didn't win. And maybe you can give them participation ribbons at the same time and pat Johnny on the head. Johnny, you win too because everybody wins. Everybody is student council president in my school. Everett Middle School is a joke. Seventh grade student Sebastian Kaplan said, "I feel like it is disrespectful to all of the people who are running. Most of the kids are in agreement that the results need to come out because kids worked really hard on their elections." Of course they did. The decision to withhold the results also met with resistance and a lot of anger from parents and district administrators. So Van Haren went and relented and went from one class to another, announcing the results on October 19th, more than a week after the election had been held. She finally gave in yesterday. What a joke. None of the 10 winners at Everett were English learners, even though students in that program make up about a third of the enrollment of the school. Van Haren has admitted she could have handled the situation better, like just being honest about a student election and not letting your predisposition to white guilt get in the way of your, I don't know if you have any clear thinking. This is the kind of ignorance that has to be battled every day in this country now. Oh my God. Somebody won and they're not of color and they're not of this group and that group. Really? Get a grip. It's the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Riding in the storm out, waiting for the thaw out.
33 after the hour on this Wednesday here on the Steve Gruber Show. You can join the conversation at 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can also check us out at stevegruber.com, where you can pick the Listen Live button, take us to work if you need to do that, or listen to complete shows, go to the archive, go to the blogs, go to the podcast. It's all there for you. We do all of this for you, the listener. Well, the controversial pastor who preached at a church attended by President Barack Obama said over the weekend that Jesus was a Palestinian, alluding to Israel as an apartheid state, and compared the youth in Ferguson and the youth in Palestine. No, for real. Ferguson, Missouri is somehow related to Palestine now. Jeremiah Wright, who led Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago from 1972 to 2008, spoke at a Nation of Islam event. It's called Justice or Else. It came on the 20th anniversary of the so-called Million Man March, where nowhere near a million people showed up, but don't let that get in the way of your conversation. Pastor Aubrey Shines here, founder of the Glory to Glory Ministries, located in the inner cities of Tampa and Orlando, Florida. Pastor, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me again.
So how do you compare the youth in Ferguson and the youth in Palestine? And how do you, this notion that somehow America is this oppressive, horrible nation that, is guilty of, you hear this all the time, keeping people in chains, it's the new slavery, it's this, it's nauseating to me.
Well, Steve, it's nauseating to me, too. And when you ask the question, how do you compare it? It's easy. You compare it when you are a revisionist. You compare it when you don't know the facts. Or you compare it when you are intentionally trying to mislead people, as Jeremiah Wright has done. You and I both know, and anyone that has studied just basic history, there is no such thing as Palestine. There never has been. It only kind of got some legs, very, very simply, when the emperor during Rome wanted to kind of taunt those Jewish guys and girls that were revolting in Rome there. And he called them actually Syria Philistine, because it resembled and echoed the Philistines that David and others had murdered, had killed, had exterminated from the land that was given to them. And so for Jeremiah Wright to take this historic revisionist false narrative, it fits into the Ferguson narrative because, again, it's divisive. And you and I both know anyone that sits anywhere for 20 years celebrates it and says that the person we're sitting under has been our inspiration. Your views are also going to be lived out through the very prism that you've been trained. And this is why I believe in Barack Obama has a disdain for Benjamin Netanyahu, for the Israeli people. And, again, it doesn't shock me. I'm a Chicago native. I'm accustomed to hearing that type of rhetoric. Unfortunately, the media is not reporting it.
Let me ask you this. and this is a serious question, is you look at the Southern Poverty Law Center, you look at some of these anti-discrimination organizations that target pretty much primarily only white organizations. But I want to ask you this, and this is a serious question. Is the Nation of Islam a hate group?
Yes, it is. I've done several CDs on this group. Not only they're a hate group, I can tell you I am a patristic theologue learner here. This is where my degrees are. I can tell you they don't even echo Islam at all. As a matter of fact, they're looked at as some kind of fringe nutcase throughout Islam. Are they a hate group? Of course they are a hate group. They've always been a hate group. They're the most anti-Semitic group that you will ever find, and they're going to continue the crazy narrative. If something is wrong, let's blame Steve. If something is wrong, let's blame that Aubrey guy because he has conservative views. So, again,
right.
It's always someone else's problem. This is who they are. This is who they've always been. So we shouldn't think it's strange. Unfortunately, again, the media won't do anything, Steve, to draw the lines and to connect the dots of Louis Farrakhan and Barack Obama with Jeremiah Wright. And trust me, as a Chicago native, I can tell you that there is no difference.
And you look at these groups, and Louis Farrakhan, when I was growing up, was considered just a kook, just a extremist, weirdo, fringe kook, frankly. And now somehow the Nation of Islam that preaches the hatred of white America, and has my entire life, and hatred of a whole and Jewish people and a whole lot more, right? Somehow has become mainstream. I don't believe that. I don't believe the Nation of Islam is any more mainstream today than it's ever been. But the media, not doing their job, asleep at the switch, willing to throw America into the ground and throw them under the bus whenever possible, somehow embraces the Nation of Islam as being a normal, mainstream, middle America thing. It couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, for them, Steve, not to embrace Islam and for them to do just their basic journalistic duty, it would be then indicative to kind of let the pendulum swing back over into Barack Obama's life, because this is someone who he has supported. So they can't do it. They're not going to do it, because to do it, it would show just how far of a progressive Marxist socialist that Barack Obama is. So they're not going to do it. And if anyone waits for them to do it, you're going to be waiting a very, very long time. No, these are hateful individuals. These are people that hate America. This is why one of the first acts that Barack Obama did when he got in office was send the bust of Winston Churchill back to Europe. Why? Because his father hated England, because they saw him as colonizers. They saw him as racists. They saw him as bigots. And this is how Barack Obama views America. This is why he never wastes any opportunity when there's a black crime that's being committed by someone white. He'll never give voice, by the way, if it's just black on black. He'll never put any oomph into it. But again, anything that highlights divisiveness, this is who these guys are. They are haters of America. This is why 2016 cannot get here fast enough for a guy like me. We got to get someone in office that's going to see America as what she is, and that's exceptional. Let's get our nation back.
Agreed. I couldn't agree with you more. It's time to get our nation back. I wonder about this whole plan by the president, though. One of his last great acts, planning to bring in 100,000 refugees from Syria and across the Middle East in the next handful of years. And the governor here in Michigan saying that we want to bring as many of them as we possibly can here to Michigan. This is a Republican governor, Rick Snyder, and I question the wisdom there based on the, we don't know the background checks or how these people are going to be vetted. It concerns me deeply, Pastor.
Well, it concerns me, and we're not talking about humanitarian deeds here, Steve. Here's the reality. Your governor is wrong. I've been a big fan of your governor there. But if the people of Michigan don't understand that there is no documentation background, and those who are in the CIA, they are already saying that there is no way for them to validate who these individuals are. You're talking about a couple, not 100,000, by the way, Steve. You're talking over 250,000 people from the Middle East, mostly men, strong, well-groomed, in-shape guys. And we're talking about about bringing them to America. No. We should create a zone somewhere in Syria. Let's protect that zone. But this could be the biggest Trojan horse that America has ever seen in our history. It is a horrible idea. And to implement it under the charity of being humanitarian, we're missing
It's
the
gotta
point.
stop,
We're
Pastor.
already in trouble in America with $19 trillion of debt.
Agreed. Pastor Aubrey Shines, everybody, here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with fat
It's 45 after. Time to talk about your health for a moment here on the program. You know, so many changes and so much to talk about over the last few years in healthcare and how you approach it and how you keep cost under control. You know, as insurance plans keep shifting. Medicaid payments, your share could go up by 55% for some people next year. 55%, that's right, going from $100, $104 a month to $156 a month. So big changes coming. Dr. Glen Stream, our next guest, past president of the American Academy of Family Physicians. He serves as the chair of the Board of Family Medicine for America's Health. Family Medicine for America's Health, a partnership of the 8 leading family medicine organizations in the U.S., bringing together Michigan's top physicians and healthcare leaders to talk about how we, get better care and at a better price. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks for having me.
It is the age-old question, my friend. How do we get better health care at a better price? We've seen a lot of attempts made, a lot of arguments, a lot of dissent and vitriol and emotion. But I don't know that we've ever really made much progress in the last few years. A lot of finger-pointing and a lot of noise and a lot of money spent. But have we moved the needle?
I think we are moving the needle in the right direction, and I think there has been a lot of debate about healthcare reform, both through federal legislation and local work by communities and employers. But what I believe is one of the big outcomes of that debate is an improved understanding of in our healthcare system what's important. What actually can improve health and what really makes a difference in the lives of individuals and families and communities is a strong primary care system. And I think we've seen an understanding that our primary care system is not as strong as it needs to be. We don't have as many primary care family doctors and other primary care physicians as we need. And our focus in today's event here in Detroit is to talk about success stories around Detroit and across Michigan where folks are making a difference through how they're promoting and implementing improved primary care.
Well, some folks would say, Doctor, that the problem is money, and not too much of it, but too little of it. And what I mean by that is a starting associate, a starting doctor in Lansing, Michigan, for example, starts at about $120,000 at a good job. Now, you think about that. That doctor's probably 30 years old, has a pile of debt. By the time they're 30, they probably have a house and a car and a wife and 2 kids. And $120,000 isn't even enough to service their debt. So why would you want to become a doctor in today's world, become a primary care physician at one of the big hospitals in Michigan where your starting pay is $120,000 or $125,000?
Yeah, you highlight some really significant obstacles that we're working on, Steve, and the educational debt is certainly one of them. Regardless of what specialty people choose, and regardless that some specialties might pay 2 or 3 or 4 times as much as a primary care physician, your debt on graduation is the same. So there are innovative things that folks have done to try to overcome that debt. But more importantly, back to your question, why would somebody choose a primary care career as a physician, and why would they want to be a personal physician, a family physician? I believe that there's a lot of people that opportunity to serve people in communities actually calls to them. It's who they were born to be. And what we have to do is get the obstacles out of their way, because I think the concern for some folks and being important in people's lives is a joy.
And I don't disagree with you. We're on the line with Dr. Glen Stream here. And I think that it is who they were born to be. The problem that a lot of people face in this country is that the doctors were born somewhere else and went to medical school somewhere else. They might have been born to be a physician, but they weren't born in America. They were born in India and Pakistan and elsewhere. And we're also seeing the disappearance of primary care physicians in exchange for PAs, physician assistants. There's a shift in the entire dynamic, if I'm not mistaken. Are you seeing the same thing, or am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're absolutely right, Steve. And some of those are adaptations to the decline in the number of primary care physicians, and physician assistants and nurse practitioners. They can be important parts of a healthcare team in a primary care practice, working along with physicians. We're better working with teams like that, including dietitians and physical therapists and pharmacists. But we absolutely have to have more primary care physicians. And you're right about, particularly in primary care, we see a higher percentage, say, than in other specialties that have gone to non-U.S. medical schools. Interestingly, a lot of those are U.S. citizens that go overseas to medical school because there's not enough capacity in U.S. medical schools. But some of them are foreign citizens that come to the United States to do their training and then to practice.
Absolutely, and the big criticism of Obamacare that I think is you can't avoid is the fact that Obamacare didn't do one thing, and that did not address the cost of health care. The entire bill, whether you love it or hate it or somewhere in the middle, it does not address spiraling cost. That is one of the big criticisms that it's hard to avoid. And I'll give you the last word on that right there, sir.
Sure. I agree it doesn't go far enough to address costs, and yet one of the biggest issues in cost is that we as a country invest too much of our healthcare dollars into care that doesn't really benefit people's health. And so the strong argument, and there's incredible research base to support this, is if you invest in primary care, you invest in good wellness and prevention, good treatment of acute illness to avoid it getting more severe, and importantly, good treatment of people with chronic illnesses, people with diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease. Those folks, if you take really good care of them, you improve their health. But by doing so, you also save cost to the system. And we need healthcare transformation in our country that doesn't just nickel and dime the employer and the patient and the doctor. We need to identify and invest in what works. And
we certainly do. Dr. Glen Stream, thank you for your time here today on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.